Welcome back to another edition of the Supply Chaney podcast, where we talk to the experts in the supply chain industry that allow us to have all of the things that we have around us, whether at home, in the office, out on the roads, all of that we interact with in the physical world had an origin. It came from a mine or a field somewhere. There was some processing done, and then ultimately it got to where we could use it. And we don't often think about what goes on in the background. And so we've been talking with MHI and specifically with their CSS industry group about what are those systems that are things that a lot of times your average consumer is not thinking about, but ultimately played a huge role in making sure that the supply chains continue and deliver the services and goods that we need every day. And so today I'm really excited to have Graham and Zack coming on, and they are both part of MHI's CSS industry group, which stands for Conveyor and Sortation Systems Group, if I have it correctly there. And so I'm really interested to learn not only what they do on a day-to-day basis as both kind of technical project manager type of roles in their organizations, but I want to learn about the interplay between the two of them, and then a little bit of how they got into the industry, how they got to where they are today, and just what they see coming down the pipeline for supply chains and sortation systems in the future. So with that said, Graham, if I could hand over the microphone to you for a couple of minutes to give the audience a little bit of an overview of yourself and your role there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Graham Butler with Lenza Americas. I'm the Chief Application Engineer, so Application Engineering Manager. We're the team that comes in and helps support, help you use the product, train people on that haven't used it before, or get out in the field with our customers and do support. I'm from Massachusetts originally, more recently in New Hampshire, but I've been in New England pretty much all my life. I did spend a little over a year in Illinois, so that was a fun time, but came back home.
Zack, handing over the microphone to you. What's the quick rundown on you?
Yeah, so quick rundown. Zack Zamiar. I'm the Director of Technical Services over here at Fee Logistics. Basically, I'm in charge of everything aftermarket that is technical in nature. So that is our 24/7 support, any of our aftermarket field resources like our field service and our site services, things like that.
Okay. I want to go and talk a little bit more about y'all's just in personal pieces a bit, because I really like to unpack what careers look like and just what the people are behind supply chains. But before we do that, Graham, could you touch on a little bit of just what MHI is in general a little bit, and then the CSS group and how you interact with that?
Yeah. So MHI is the material handling industry. And for me, they're the trade organization that's behind two of the biggest trade shows that we participate in, ProMat and Modex. So yeah, touching all different parts of the material handling supply chain industry, from component manufacturers like Lenza to integrators and machine manufacturers like Five, and people who put it into action like the big distribution centers.
Mm-hmm.
CSS is a place where Lenza does motion control, and in a nutshell, what we're focusing on is making machines move. So conveyors and sortation, for us, that's a big focus. Those are a big part of the motion that goes into material handling. There's other industry groups that cover other aspects, but that's why Lenza, one area we focus on is the conveyor and sortation community. So, but yeah, personally for me, like way back, I've been with Lenza for 13 years, and I've gotten the opportunity to go to various trade shows. And when you're younger and you're at the trade shows and you don't really know a lot of people, but you see a lot of people that seem to like have a bunch of friends around the place. You're like, wow, that seems cool. I wish I was one of those. So there was a YPN group, or there is a YPN group within MHI for young professionals. And it's just an open networking event that was at all the trade shows. So I would see them like, well, I'll go get a free beer, whatever. And you go at one year, you go another year, you start to see some familiar faces. They say, hey, why don't you join some coffee chats? Why don't you join the book club? Why don't you come to some of the virtual meetings? And through that, I got to know the community better. And through that, then I had the opportunity to go to some of the MHI conferences that are outside the trade show. And that's why I stumbled into a CSS group meeting and said, is there something I can do to participate? I said, come on in. So that, for me, it's not just a trade organization. It's a community of people that you work with and you become friends with, and it is work. I like what I do. But part of the reason I like what I do is because I like the people that I get to interact with.
Excellent. Man, what a testimony there for MHI. I'm curious, Zach, from your perspective, what's your kind of interaction like with MHI and the industry group?
Well, they provide great resources to us. It's, to echo a lot of, of what Graham said, it's the community that's within the industry to, bounce ideas off of and, kind of watch the trends of how things are going. So yeah, no,
Excellent.
it's great group.
Let's kind of go back to kind of unpacking just those personal stories. Graham, if I'm looking, it looks like you went and studied mechanical engineering. And,
Correct.
as we all know, career paths meander and whatnot. So I guess maybe the first thing is, what put you on a track to studying mechanical engineering in the first place?
I'm really good at not making decisions. No, so yeah, my Wentworth is the college I went to. My grandfather had studied there. He was a machinist, and they had night schools at the time, and so that's where he went from a machine operator to a person running more of the machining, and that's how he progressed some of his career. So it was always in my mind of like, oh, that's a cool school. I didn't really know where to go. I applied to a couple places. I also know that I like playing with machines. I would take apart tape recorders and whatever, and toasters, and whatever was going to get thrown out. So for me, it was always that mechanical aspect. I also looked at it as, wow, there's a lot you can do with mechanical engineering. I don't really have to decide what I want to do right now. I can just know that I can kick that can down the road and see what opportunities are out there. So yeah, that's why I picked mechanical engineering, but also because I do like machines and mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also in that group of kids that thought I could fix everything that broke in the house. And, the fun thing is, if it's already broken, you can't break it more. So, the only option you have is to fix it, maybe in 1 out of 10 times. So I appreciate that you've kind of shared that, that mechanical sort of inclination. It makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, Zach, on your end, like, where are you from, and where were you thinking you were going to take your life as you were getting out of high school?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. I always had a lust for electronics. I got a job at a real young age as a bench tech at 14
Wow.
for a local fire alarm company doing rework on circuit boards, and really began to enjoy electronics technology. And after high school, I actually went into the trades. I became an electrician, master electrician over many years. I worked,
Wow.
actually was the founder of a local small electrical integration company that we grew over 15 years, and we sold to ADT, and we were one of the largest ADT commercial groups in North America. And we were electrical integrator. We integrated hospitals and municipality and things like that. And I got a passion for complex networks and integration of different components. I was managed a lot of projects, was a project manager for about 15 years or so, and actually came by the way of Interlogistics through a technology project that they had, where we were just trying to integrate some internal systems. Really was very interested in the industry. There was a lot going on at that time. I have a passion for service, customer service specifically. So, I was given the opportunity to really help begin shaping our customer service over here at FEVE to match, our very robust equipment. So that's how I got here.
I see. I think that, oftentimes I'm talking with folks that are from all walks of life and from all areas of the supply chain. I can be talking with someone that works for a railroad, or someone who works for a trucking company, or someone who works for a manufacturing or a factory one day. And what I think is really, really cool is that we all have kind of these stories and these histories and these passions that we bring to our jobs. And it allows us to bring a different perspective, to have really great influence on just the direction that an organization takes. And if you expand upon that, what an the direction an entire industry takes. But at the base, it's all about its people. Even if you might have be an engineer, eventually I find, if you're good at what you're doing, eventually you're going to be responsible for people, and making sure that your organization delivers and provides that customer service. So it always kind of comes back down to the business element. I'm curious, Graham, on the people side, and as you've gone through your career, what has that looked like, to the point now, being a chief application engineer? How do you handle the people and talent part of the job?
Yeah. So there is, like all industries, there's a lot of aspects to it. Like you just mentioned, there's a lot of different parts of supply chain. Just like that, with the technology that we offer, there's a lot of different industries that it impacts. There's a lot of different technologies that go into it, and you can go down a lot of rabbit holes. So the competency matrix that you might look at of what do we need to cover is huge. And part of it is we need to look at where is our focus as a business so that I can give direction to the team that I have and say, maybe we need to grow in this area. But it's also part of the person. I'm a mechanical engineer, but I also do PLC programming now. It's not a natural progression necessarily, or it's not on the map, but it can be. So you have to pay attention to the goals of the individual, and the variety that we see can sometimes uncover a hidden talent or interest. And so I guess for me, it's being mindful of what the person is looking to do. And you can't do that with a spreadsheet. You have to do that with face-to-face conversations with the team, but also give them some guidance and have a plan of where it could be, because they may not know either. Like myself, I stumbled into mechanical engineering because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I came to Lenza because I still didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew they had a training program that had different outcomes that were possible and exposure to the whole company before you got your, designated role at the end. So yeah, for me, it's being mindful of the business objectives, the go-to-market strategy, so you can fine tune the priorities for competency development and pay attention to the person.
Right. At the end of the day, there are, I think you bring up a good point that every individual on your team, that they all need to be pointed in the same direction, but personally they all have different ambitions and desires and what they're trying to look out and get out of a job, maybe more than just a paycheck. And so as the leader, you have to balance, what the people on your team are trying to accomplish, and then what the bigger mission is, and juggle all these things and take care of customers. Good thing you get paid to do this stuff, huh?
We get paid.
So Zach, maybe kind of pointing it in your direction, I see that you've had a significant history in project management, and I feel like a lot of what business is just managing projects. Even if you're thinking, if you're a CEO, it's a project. You've got a vision, you got to put together all your milestones and your roadmap together to get to that end. How do you kind of apply project management ideas in what you do day to day?
Well, from my perspective, all projects are very, they have similar milestones. They have a beginning and more importantly, they have an end. So that's why, I think that's a very important in customer service, especially, we're dealing with technical issues. Treat everything like a project. Everything has a beginning and a close. And, it's the approach that we take with just about everything. So the parallels are there, especially in my business. We, it doesn't matter how minute, if it's a individual service ticket or all of, a large retrofit program.
What I think is kind of interesting actually about this panel that we have here with the two of you all is that you all kind of work together in a way with, the outputs from Graham's company being inputs into yours. And I'm kind of curious, how do you work and build and put together, I guess, your conveyor systems and in your projects, and how is it, I guess, impactful to be part of something like MHI and the industry group to go have those relationships and build relationships with your vendors?
Well, first off, all of our equipment, is, we have standard product, but it's all, built specifically for the application. And all the different motors and different sensors, PLC systems, all these things, there's certain customer requirements, and being a part of MHI opens us up to all the different products that are available so that, we can select the correct components that best suit our customers' needs. we recently done some work with Lens, and so yeah, that's the approach.
All right. All right. Kind of kicking that back to you then, Graham. How do you kind of help make sure that on your end of the deal here that you're providing the best possible service, before the sale, after the sale, and just being kind of the best partner and vendor for folks like on Zachary's side?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously part of it is there's a brand awareness part of just being visible to the market, being part of the conferences and trade shows. That's one part of it. But also it's if we're participating in these activities and getting close to the players in the industry and understanding the true challenges of the industry and the trends of where it's going, then we can look at that and tailor our services and our product, roadmaps around, well, maybe we need to consider something to address this other challenge that isn't being addressed right now. And the other part is just, connecting with various people when you're face to face in opportunities like that. Maybe I meet somebody like Zach and it's like, oh, maybe you need some training. I know who to connect you to that handles coordination of training. And I think that's a big part of it is making sure that it's not just winning the order, it's making sure that we're showing up to support, being proactive and also reactive when necessary.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right.
Definitely.
If you could dive in a little bit more and just for folks, this being a supply chain oriented sort of podcast here, I think that you all make, motion control for multiple industries. Could you, like, from your perspective, how are y'all like looking at the supply chain industry and like logistics, I guess, sort of use case and vertical versus other industries? I have to think that it's growing, but I'm very, very biased because I'm a supply chain guy. So I think we're the center of the universe. But how does it kind of compare with other verticals and industries that y'all serve?
Yeah. For us, it's definitely a top focus. We see it as a very active industry. It's a growing industry. Maybe I'm not the best person to ask necessarily, but maybe it's not growing as fast as it was in years past, but it's still a significant opportunity for growth for us and for the customers that we serve. Other industries that maybe are competing or that, on kind of on my radar would be, we hear a lot about data centers and the impact of AI and how that pushes out into other industries. We're not building AI, but those systems need heating and cooling, and pumps and fans need motors, and they need electronics to control those motors. And that's the motion control that we offer as well. So that is another kind of highlight industry that we look at. But I would say material handling, logistics is still a top, if not top one or top two.
Yes. Got it. I can pitch that question to your VP of sales one day and they'll be able to like narrow that down really good. So kind of curious on your side, Zach, is factories and logistics and supply chain kind of like a primary industry that you're serving, or is there something else that I'm not seeing on my radar that y'all do?
Yeah, so we move product. So the baggage handling, or I'm sorry, we're in the airport baggage handling industry, along with warehouse distribution. We build robotics and things like that, like ASRS systems, things like that. So but in terms of the supply chain industry, it's a huge part of our business. It's a huge part of my customer base. I see a lot of this. This is a really interesting time to be a part of it. Actually, in my opinion, there's a lot of changes to equipment that's coming. New technology. Bringing some technology that's existed overseas and bringing that to the States. So it's a really great time to be a part of it.
All right. Maybe let's zoom in to the season that we're in right now. So we're recording this right after the holidays. We just kind of went through, I guess what probably a peak season of sorts for just about any sort of logistics and supply chain oriented. From either one of y'all, who I was just part of an event yesterday where we were highlighting the failures and some things that went wrong over this past sort of peak season. And I'm kind of curious from y'all's perspective of systems and just in the system, the pieces. Was there anything that you all heard about that kind of just broke down during, you don't have to name names, but the things that just didn't work, that some lessons taken away from this last peak season And either one of you all that has maybe like a good story to share, just jump in.
Well, I mean, I can just start off that peak season is our life over here. We spend all year training for it. It starts pretty much in January when peak is ending. There is the post peak assessment.
Okay.
Where we try to evaluate all of the lessons learned and how we can prep and train for next year's peak. We spend all year training for it. It really sounds silly, but we do. We reinforce our systems based on last year's experience, and we go into a position, like I said, where we are analyzing the post peak and then preparing for the pre peak.
Okay. Any cautionary tales, any sort of like nuggets of wisdom that y'all kind of pulled out that we can kind of share here that people can kind of take away with them?
Yeah, big thing for me was spare parts. Understanding having the right quantities of the necessary parts on site. I don't want to name names, but I think that is a huge point, huge lesson learned this year. Making sure doing those pre-peak parts assessments, making sure that we have an analyst come in, look at what you've got, making sure you've got the key components that you need to get through those tough times.
Makes sense. And maybe if we look kind of just at just the cost of living and tariffs, and I've got to imagine that the macro economy weighed in on of what those decisions are of how many spare parts to have on hand, and maybe those budgets were a little bit tighter, and that has ripple effects, I could imagine.
I mean, we've seen some of that.
Okay.
Luckily for us, a lot of our we're American company, so we didn't get hit with too much of it. But yeah, no, a lot of it, everybody's trying to do more with less. That's there's more of that every year, and that's where our goal would be to partner with our customers, especially our service agreement holders, to really make sure that they're in the best spot for peak. So like I said, a lot of it begins with a number of assessment programs and seeing where the customer's at, leading into it, and making our recommendations.
Okay. All right. What about on your end, Graham? Any good post peak stories or lessons learned?
I mean, we're a little removed on the component side. So we're aware of peak season, but we're the spare part. We're the one sitting on the shelf, or we're the backup support of like, I can't figure out what's going on. I need your help. So we're ready to help our customers. And the other part is you might get an emergency request for a lack of a spare part that is needed now. I can't say that I necessarily saw an issue with like less spare parts being ordered ahead of time because of tariffs. But I think we have electronics, we have manufacturing in the US and Massachusetts to the circuit board level. But even then, there's components that there's only a certain amount of places you can get them from. Yeah. To try to avoid a tariff is almost impossible, if not impossible. So we definitely felt the impact of that, but we try to minimize the impact that gets pushed down, how much the impact gets pushed down the road.
I see.
But yeah, for sure, we get the calls of this thing's got a blinking red light on it. What do I do? The easiest thing is put something else in there, figure out the problem when it's not peak season. Easier said than done if you don't have the product sitting on the shelf, but it's not necessarily the time to do a deep dive and a root analysis in the middle of peak season. You just need that thing to be running.
And I think this is kind of where those conversations start coming in of when you've got a line down situation and the cost and impact of every minute and every hour that something is down. Both of you all are a little bit on that engineering and application and making sure that things keep running and performing the way they should. Grant, do you have, just kind of like some words of wisdom of how y'all approach that on your end to make sure that that uptime and that quality of devices is there?
Yeah. So I think a couple of things for me that come to mind that can be done ahead of time are standardizing on the components that are used. Then there could be less spare parts to have to worry about or less variation in the spare parts. I'm mechanical in background. Right sizing is a word that gets thrown around a lot, but making sure that it was sized properly, that the horsepower you have is the horsepower you need. Some things will wear out. if they're not big enough, or they'll trip a fault if they're not big enough, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those are the two big ones. The other one is training, proper training for the staff that is on the front line, for the maintenance team that supports that equipment, for the support staff of our customers that is the support of the maintenance team. If we don't have a good training or clear documentation to diagnose or to quickly just, how do I take this out, put the new one in, slap a program in, and get it running again? If that's not clear and simple, we're adding time to the downtime.
Right. And then you've got those airport sortation systems. You're throwing a part on a plane and next flight out and trying to get that out to that operation, right? How do you approach this on your side, Zach?
Yeah, so for us, it's a lot about people and training. We have on the support side, operations and availability, equipment availability to operations is king. We are trying to, our customers, they need it, so it starts with our people and really great training and a focus. It's part of our internal culture that we are always looking to help, looking to stay engaged. We have a pretty aggressive remote support approach here, where we don't break the call. We stay engaged and just hammer a problem until it's resolved. And so that's why I say it starts with the people. It starts with the expectation that we're taking care of the customer, and what the customer needs is their equipment operational. So yeah, we will pull out any and all stops to make sure that happens. I've gone through some pretty outrageous efforts to get parts on site, from getting private jets, even been able to use our customers' own logistics resources to help get parts to site. So, we will pull out any and all obstacles to make something happen.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm curious, in this age of sensors and dashboards and electronics everywhere, I've got to imagine that, in these systems that we're building today, there's a lot of sensors that are just making sure that this thing is still working functionally, and it's going to shoot, a trigger somewhere that says, hey, I'm not acting right, or this is starting to be off. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of that technology that's being used to just make sure that systems keep running?
Yeah. So there's, I could talk a little bit about it and we'll still show, but, preventative and really predictive maintenance systems. That's a big thing these days. And luckily for us, the equipment is smarter than it ever has been. Down to even the subcomponents have data embedded into them and the ability to collect data that has previously been untapped. We like to use our system on some of our service agreement customers where we can monitor, and what we're looking at is we don't look for anomalies. We normalize the data. We're looking for abnormal trends and things like that so that we can predict possible failures.
I think that you might have said, I don't want to steal the show, because Graham may be able to weigh in here a little bit too.
Sure.
So yeah, when you look at one of our core products is a frequency inverter. It's the electronic that runs electric motors, which run the majority of conveyance systems and sortation systems. They're essentially packed with sensors. You can see motor currents, the load that you're putting on it. In itself, it doesn't have enough memory for long-term diagnostics to determine trends and trip points, or detect an anomaly where maybe there's a bearing that's failed, or things like that, or maybe something's worn out, a belt's too loose, or something's jammed up. But that information can be shared across networks, different field bus networks. It can make its way to the cloud with different solutions, whether it's AI or other algorithms can evaluate that data that we can make available to act on it. And that's where predictive maintenance, or just monitoring to see, like I said, detecting anomalies, and before the red light comes on or before the system stops, to say there might be something going on here. And I think it can continue to get more and more advanced, and that realm isn't really my sweet spot, but the smarter the stuff gets and the data that it's looking at, we have more than enough data. It's just understanding what you're looking at and how to interpret it. And I think that's what'll come as we progress into the future of AI and cloud technologies.
Yeah. Anything to elaborate on there, Zach?
Yeah, no, I mean, you like the lens systems, that's the data we're collecting. We want to try to mine that from all these different components. And yeah, I tell everybody around here that, we're not collecting the data for the systems that we have today. We're collecting the data for the systems that we'll have tomorrow. We need this information to fuel these new AI systems. It's a big thing for us right now is just recording every piece of data that we can, even if it doesn't make much sense to us today, because the hopes is that data will be able to fuel more advanced AI systems in the future.
Right. Because you've got to have a data set for them to work with.
Mhm.
And, what's funny is 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, this concept of big data came out. And I think we're living in the age today of that. What we thought big data was a while ago is nothing compared to what it is today. But we don't really label it that anymore. Now we're just it's just commonplace. And now enters stage left, AI, to help us try to sort through and make sense of and see the patterns in all of this data that we have, it feels like. And, you can't really have a conversation these days, I think, without touching on AI. So I'm glad that we kind of got there. But I think that in the world that you all, both of your organizations live in, it's in the physical world. You're moving physical things. You've got motion controls. You've got sortation systems and whatnot. And so, but there's still a play for AI. So maybe, if either one of you wants to kind of just elaborate a little bit more on maybe how either of your organizations are leveraging AI in your devices or in your systems.
So really for right now, what I'm using AI and AI platforms is our efforts are always to resolve issues as fast as possible. So by collecting data, we use AI systems to parse past tickets and past service events to look for trends so that we can resolve current issues. The trick is to not solve the same problem twice. We only want to solve it once, and then use that data to in the future. So.
I like that. That's a good. I'm going to take a note on that one. Anything, Graham, from your side, a little bit, just a quick note on AI before we kind of wrap things up here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just for making funny pictures. No, I would say very similar. On an organizational level, that's where I see most activity with AI within our company. So, service tickets, how to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of operations and processes that we have. I would say that's the biggest use case and impact. On the other side, like as an application engineer, we do some coding as well. It's an enhancement tool. It can sift through a bunch of documentation or resources on the web to evaluate an issue or for how to create a certain type of code function. I know how to do some of it, but it can get you there quicker. So it's not going to, today anyways, not going to take the place of the coding. It's not going to take the place of the service engineer, but it is a nice enhancement tool to be able to create a bigger impact in a shorter period of time.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
I agree with that.
Well, this has been a pleasure getting to talk with you all and hear a little bit about your expertise, your experience, your perspective on how and what makes supply chains hum. And you all are an integral part of that, both of your organizations. And I will be looking out for you all at Modex here coming up soon. I would imagine both of you all will be there. So I'll stop by your booth and say hello. And just any last closing thoughts on your end, Graham?
Oh, good question. No, I mean, I appreciate the opportunity being able to contribute to a podcast like this on behalf of CSS and obviously representing Lenza, but no, it was a cool opportunity. It's the first podcast I've done. So.
All right. Congratulations. How about you, Zach? Any closing thoughts?
Echo a lot of the same. I appreciate being involved and appreciate Graham for reaching out and yourself. So no, this is great.
Excellent. All right. Well, I look forward to seeing you all maybe in person soon.
Awesome.
I'll be there.
Thank you.